Hi, in this lesson, we go into more details of program units. We understand more about procedures, functions, and also bring in a new object called package. And we understand primarily more about how to deal with parameters in the context of procedures and functions. Let's get started. We have seen already how to pass parameters in the previous lesson, and now the parameters are of three different modes. So when you create a parameter, if you don't mention anything about the parameter mode, it's considered to be in, which is the default parameter mode. But you may want to have parameters which are of mode output, that is specified using the keyword out. You may also want to have parameters which are both in and out. So what do I mean by out parameter? In parameter is saying we are sending a value into the procedure. Out parameter is saying the value is coming outside the procedure. So the procedure sends a value to the caller using out parameter. In out parameter is saying it is going to receive a value from the caller and it is also sending a value back. That means the actual parameter, which is what we are sending from the caller, will be assigned to the formal parameter, the parameter that we declare in procedure. And if you receive the value from actual to formal, we call it as in. But if you are sending the data from your formal parameter back to actual parameter, it is out. And if you want to do both, it is called as in out. So let's examine these options. In parameter is the default, so you don't need to mention it. And it is going to receive the value from the actual parameter. So here formal parameter is acting like a constant. So the parameter we declared in the procedure is working like a constant. You can't change it. And formal parameter cannot be assigned a value because it behaves like a constant. An actual parameter means whatever we are passing to formal parameter can be a constant or it can be any variable or an expression. Whereas in case of out parameter, you have to provide not any constant. The actual parameter must be a variable. It cannot be an expression or a constant. And formal parameter must be assigned a value because the value is coming back from the procedure to the caller. And formal parameter behaves like uninitialized variable. So it is like a variable that is not assigned any value. So we need to make sure we assign a value to that formal parameter inside the procedure. Only then the value can go back to actual parameter. And in out is actually the best of these two. So here you need to mention in out very specifically. Even that is the case for out because default is in. Passes a value in both ways. So the actual parameter is copied to formal parameter. Changes made to formal parameter can go back to actual parameter. And in this case, formal parameter is an initialized variable, and then actual parameter must be a variable because its value is copied to formal parameter. And the value from formal parameter goes back to actual parameter. An example would make the whole process easy. So let's look at this. I have a procedure that is going to get me the minimum and maximum salaries for the given job. So it is going to take job ID as in parameter. And I don't need to mention it, but it doesn't harm if I mention it explicitly. The next thing is out parameter, and I must explicitly give out here and there. So both these are considered to be uninitialized variables, and they must be assigned a value in the body of the procedure. And if you don't assign the value, it's considered to be an error. So minimum salary, maximum salary are called out parameters, and all three are called formal parameters. Please be aware of this terminology. And we use the same terminology in many other languages. It's not anything specific to PL SQL. So job ID is what we are receiving from the caller. We get this as in parameter, and then we are talking about two out parameters. One is minimum salary, the other one maximum salary. Now this query is going to retrieve the data and copying that into those two out parameters. That's all. That's all we need to do in the procedure. Once the procedure is done, you are guaranteed values for minimum salary and maximum salary. Then how do you call this procedure? Well, here it is. To call the procedure, we need to provide three parameters. The first parameter can be any constant or a variable, does not matter. But second and third parameters must be variables, because those two parameters are out parameters. When you are dealing with out parameter, the actual parameter must be a variable. Remember, this is what we call as actual parameter. This is the formal parameter. So it is going to receive the value from your formal parameter to corresponding actual parameter. That is what out is doing. By any chance, if you want to send data from this actual parameter to formal parameter and also receive the data back from that to this, you should declare that as in out. Just out won't do, because we want to receive something from actual parameter and send something back to actual parameter. So this is what we mean by in out parameter. So here we are. Let's execute the code and see how things go. This is our procedure. So let's go create the procedure, and procedure is successfully compiled, means created. And the next step is to run that. To run that procedure, to invoke that, we have to give this, and to print the output that is coming into minimum and maximum salary variables, we need to first start this, set the server output on as usual, and then go run this. And as you run, you're going to see the output there. So the procedure is giving the output 4,200 and 9,000. Let's clear everything and then run it again, and you can see the output 4,200 and 9,000. That's how it works. And you have to be careful about what to use here, whether out or in out or in. It's not such a difficult decision, but still you need to be aware of the implications. So if you have any doubt, go to this chart. There you get all the details. Now, the next interesting thing is parameter notation. So how do you pass values to parameter? Not that whether you can modify or not modify, but how do you pass values to parameter? Let's understand an example first. I have now three parameters for my procedure. The first parameter is N1, and we are assigning a value to that, which is called as default value. So we have a facility called default value. That means if no value is provided to this parameter, at the time you call the procedure, I want 1 to be assigned to that. This is called default value. The syntax is simple. You need to give this assignment operator followed by the default value. So 1 will be assigned to N1, 2 will be assigned to N2, and 3 for N3. That's how we designed this procedure. Now, the first invocation is where we pass 3 values to those 3 parameters. So N2 gets 20, N3 gets 30, N1 is 10. So those 3 are passed based on the position. That means first value goes to first parameter. Second value goes to second parameter. This is what we have been using right from the beginning. And right from the beginning, Oracle PL SQL supported this. But of late, we got some nice new additions where you can pass parameters by giving the name of the parameter. So I don't need to know the order of the parameters. For example, I don't know whether N2 is given first or third position or in fourth position. So I can just directly give N2 and give the value. And again, you need to use a different operator, and this is known as fat arrow. It's just equal to followed by greater than. So give the parameter name and give the value. The same I'm doing for N3. What does it mean? It means your N1 is not given any value. That's fine because we already have a default value for N1. Of course, you can't ignore any parameter that does not have a default value. So if you have a default value, that is fine. So if you have the default value, then that will be automatically assigned to N1. Now N2 gets 20, N3 gets 30. So the output is going to be 1 and then 20 and then 30. Now comes the last option where we are mixing positional parameter notation with named parameter notation. So what does it mean? The first parameter is not using any name, so it goes to the first parameter here. So 10 goes to N1. I'm not giving anything for N2. I'm giving a value for N3 that directly goes there. So some parameters are given by the position and the remaining are given by the name. This is called mixed notation. And the advantage with the positional is you don't need to remember or don't need to know anything about parameter names, but you got to know the order of parameters. And the advantage with named, you don't need to worry about the position of the parameters. You just need to know the names of the parameters. And they might be in any order in the procedure. And then if you have a lot of parameters, like say 10 parameters, and you want to give first 3, so you don't need to bother about giving the name. Directly give the first 3 values. For remaining, you have to use, if you like, the named parameter notation. That means you provide the name instead of position. So you are free to mix it. But if you are planning to mix it, do not forget you need to give all positional parameters first, then only named parameters. That is the order you need to go with. So let's see how that works. And I have just a different example here. So this is where we create a procedure. Let's create it first. And let's just clear everything. And also we don't need the log, just push it down. And now let's go create it. The procedure is created. And now it's time to call that. And if you call this in this way, let's comment out some of them just to understand one by one. So if you go and run this, that's the output of it. The output is going to be 10, 20, 30. And then if you try to run the same thing in this way, now I comment out that and then uncomment this. I give 20 to N2 and then 30 to N3. And if I go and run this piece of code, I'm going to get 1, 20, 30. Of course, I can change the order. I can say something like N1 is equal to 30. And then, the result is going to be different because we are passing value to N1, N2, but not to N3. So the output will be 30, 20, and 3. So play around and understand what's really happening. And then the last is where we are talking about positional plus the named. So 10 goes to N1 and 10 goes to N3 and N2 is not given a value, so it assumes automatically the default, which is 2. So go run it, you're going to see 10, 2, 10. But you have to be careful, as I mentioned, you have to give them in the correct order. And if you try to do it in this way, what happens? You're going to get an error. A positional parameter might not follow a named association. So it is saying a positional parameter association cannot be given after a named association. So all positional parameters should be given first, and only then your named parameters can be used like this, whatever you want to give. Okay, so when you have a procedure with a lot of parameters like 10, sometimes 15, then it is very useful to go with named parameters, especially if you are not planning to provide values for all of them. So whatever is your case, these are the features of the language. So try to make the most of it, and also make sure you have a default value, because by any chance, if you don't have a default value, then every invocation must make sure it is including a value for N1. For example, if I recreate my procedure with this, and then if I try to call this, it's not going to work because we are saying a wrong number of types of arguments, because we are not passing any value to the mandatory parameter. The mandatory parameter here is N1. So you must give value for N1 and then you can give value for any other parameter. So this is now fine. Let's clear this and run this. And what if you are trying to give this using named parameter like this? Is that fine? Well, as long as the value is given, whether you use positional or named, it should not make any difference. So that's the way the positional parameters work. Let's get back to our slides. And here, the next important thing is invoker rights. We already understood what is definer right. Definer right is where you run the procedure with the privileges of definer. That means whoever is the owner of the procedure, you will be invoking procedure with the privileges of the owner. But sometimes it is desired to have the privileges of invoker to be used rather than the definer. So let's look at this scenario. User 2 is having privilege to run procedure, which is created by user 1. So procedure belongs to user 1. But user 2 is trying to invoke it. When user 2 is invoking procedure, in normal cases, you get the privileges of user 1 because user 2 is invoking the procedure created by user 1. He runs the procedure with the privileges of user 1. So in that case, whenever user 2 is invoking the procedure, procedure is using table that is belonging to user 1, because procedure is run with the privileges of user 1. But now I want it to be different. I want the procedure to use the schema objects of the invoker. So when user 2 is invoking the procedure, I want procedure to use the object of user2. And when the procedure is invoked by user1, I want the procedure to use the table belonging to user1. So in case if you have user3 invoking the procedure, it should use the table that is present in user3, not in user1. Well, if that is your requirement, yes, you can achieve that. And this is possible by using what is called as invoker rights. Here is an example for invoker rights. I'm creating a procedure called add message, and this procedure is associated with the other ID current user. And by giving this, you are telling Oracle that this procedure should be called with privileges of invoker, not the privileges of definer. If you don't give that clause, then the default is definer right. So now add message is invoked with the privileges of the caller. So if the procedure is using any table, the table is taken from the schema of invoker, not the definer. So that's about invoker rights and how it is different from definer rights. Well, when we have a lot of procedures and functions, sometimes even hundreds of procedures and functions, then we want to divide them into different groups so that we can more easily manage them. Also, at times we want to have some variables and some artifacts that are to be accessed all over the application. In such cases, we can bring a new concept called package into picture. So a package is a collection of procedures and functions generally related to a particular topic. So I can create a package related to all the procedures and functions of jobs, and another package for employees, another package for departments, and so on. A package can also have variables and data types that you can use globally. That means you can use some variables. Those variables can be used even outside the package, just like global variables. A package is having two different steps. You create the specification first, list out all the public members. Public members are the ones we can access from outside the package. Then you create the body where you define those public members, but you are also free to have some private members, the members that are not accessible outside the package. So here is my package called department package. Department package is a package that is having two members. They're called as members. The first one is change manager, a procedure. The second one is employee count, which is a function. So to create the package, we start by saying create package and followed by the package name. And within that, we need to give the list of public members. So public members are declared in package specification, and then they are to be created in package body. Create package body is another command, and here is the example. So we are writing code for change manager and employee count, and these are the members of the package. In addition to these two, if you want, you can have some more procedures and functions, but they cannot be invoked outside the package. There's nothing new about the procedures and functions. They are very similar to what we have been creating, but they are just now part of the package. And then if you see how we call those procedures and functions, just a small extra step. You need to use the package name when you call the procedure or a function that is part of the package. So I have to use deptpkg, that's the name of the package, followed by dot, followed by the member of the package. Apart from the packages that we created, we can use a lot of packages provided by Oracle. So Oracle provides a lot of predefined packages. They're called Oracle supplied packages. And if you see, we have been using one such package called DBMS output. So DBMS output is a package provided by Oracle. Apart from that, we have packages like DBMS refresh, which is used in the context of materialized views. DBMS SQL is used for advanced dynamic SQL. LOB, which is used for LOBs. Row ID, DBMS row ID is to manipulate row ID. And then UTL is about utility packages. UTL file is a very interesting package providing a lot of functions and procedures using which you can manipulate files. For more information about the UTL file, please check out my blog in my website. There I explained how to use UTL file. So this is about program units part 2. In this, we talked about how to use parameter modes, parameter notations, how to deal with invoker rights and how is it different from definer rights. And we created a package with the 2 different steps, package specification first, then package body. We can create packages anytime we like, and Oracle also supplies a lot of packages providing various functionalities. So this is about program units. It's a very important topic in the context of PL SQL. So do practice a lot, and I'll catch you with more about programming with PL SQL in the next lesson.